mother who was climbing towards a bright future.
You couldn't help but to smile being around her.
She wanted to work even harder to provide a better life for herself and for her children.
She never expected to find love in her own neighborhood.
Hey, you need some help?
But when it showed up on her doorstep, she was like a moth to the flame.
They immediately hit it off.
She loved that he was the strong, silent type.
However, the whirlwind romance would be cut short by an unthinkable tragedy.
She is cold to the touch, and rigor mortis has already set in.
This was one of those cases that was an eyebrow raiser from the start.
Her body didn't have any visible signs of trauma, no gunshot wounds, no stabs.
As investigators pore over the case, the mystery only deepens.
Someone has carved an obscenity in the side of her car.
He was just one of those guys that couldn't seem to stay out of trouble.
He was not all the way right in the mind. His mind is gone.
Detectives would soon learn that a twisted mind can be just as dangerous as a lethal weapon.
He's not telling the whole story.
He has a psychotic disorder.
His anger and controlling tendencies were spiraling completely out of control.
February 4th, 2016. It's lunchtime in Waco, Texas, a quiet community located halfway between Dallas and Austin.
It's a city dubbed the heart of Texas.
It's been a community experiencing quite a bit of growth in the last 10 or 15 years. It's a community on the rise, but very close-knit one.
However, one close-knit Waco family has spent their day in a panic. At 12:30 p.m., Latasha Kenton arrives at the home of her 29-year-old niece, Nikki Walker.
Well, I just got here.
No one has seen or heard from Nikki in the last few days.
Nikki hadn't called to check on her two kids, who was staying at her grandmother's for the week, while Nikki worked late shifts at her new job.
She was really a devoted mother, close to her children, and she would make phone calls to them when she was on break from work. She didn't make her typical routine phone calls, which raised red flags to the family.
Her family was growing increasingly concerned, so her aunt decided to check the home.
Okay, well, I'm gonna try to get inside. Well, her car is here, so that's a good sign.
She saw Nikki's car parked in the front yard.
I'll keep you posted. All right.
And when Latasha approaches the vehicle, she notices her niece inside.
Nikki!
Inside the car, Nikki is in the front seat, but she is unconscious and unresponsive.
Latasha makes a desperate call to 911. But when police arrive, it's clear there's no saving Latasha's niece.
As soon as they touch her body, they realize, unfortunately, they're too late.
No pulse.
Oh, Nikki!
She is cold to the touch, and rigor mortis has already set in.
Nikki Walker is dead.
Unikia Walker, also known as Nikki, carried a radiant energy with her wherever she went.
Nikki had a very infectious personality where you couldn't help but to smile being around her.
She was bubbly and fun-loving and eager to enjoy new experiences. Nikki had 2 children that she adored.
As a single mom with 2 little mouths to feed, Nikki was no stranger to hard work.
Hey, girl. Yeah, I can cover for you. Let me just make sure my grandma can watch the kids, okay?
For a while, she worked as a customer service representative for a Texas utility company.
But she wasn't satisfied with where she was in life, so she wanted to work even harder to provide a better life for herself and for her children.
And that's what led her to decide to go back to school and further her career.
She enrolled in Texas State Technical College.
Nikki's goal was to get a job in security technologies, and before long, she'd do just that.
She started a position at a well-known aerospace and defense company.
She had built a really good life for herself.
And in the spring of 2015, she'd find a partner to share it with.
Hey, you need some help?
That's okay. I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, let me help you out here.
36-year-old Marcus Scott lived in Nikki's neighborhood, just a couple streets away.
Marcus was the strong, silent type.
Nikki was drawn in by his sweet and gentle demeanor.
Thank you. It's been a long day.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I live right down the street if you ever need anything.
Good to know.
Between work, school, and being a single mom, Nikki didn't get out very much. So dating someone who lived in her neighborhood seemed like a perfect scenario.
It seemed like a match made in heaven.
Before long, they were inseparable, hanging out all the time.
The kids liked spending time with him as much as she did.
Nikki wanted a man who would stay by her side and help her raise her children.
Nikki really saw a future with this individual and thought they could be together.
So how did she end up dead in the driveway of her own home?
Judging by the fact that her body was cold to the touch and rigor mortis had already set in, police can tell Nikki has already been dead as long as 48 hours.
But what happened to her?
Her body didn't have any visible signs of trauma, no gunshot wounds, no stabs, no abrasions. None of those things were seen.
This was one of those cases that was an eyebrow raiser from the start. So from Jump Street, we're talking about a bit of a mystery as to how she got to where she got and what had happened to her leading to her death.
Police began to speculate that maybe Nikki passed away from some type of medical issue or possibly even a drug overdose.
However, on the exterior of Nikki's vehicle, investigators locate a telling clue that suggests otherwise.
Detectives, come take a look at this.
Someone has carved the word in the paint.
That is someone who has thought about this. They know what they're going to do.
At 29 years old, Nikki Walker had already built a great life for herself in Waco, Texas.
With 2 healthy children, a good job, and a good man by her side, she had everything that she ever wanted.
But now Nikki has been found dead inside her car. And based on the initial evidence, it looks like she was murdered.
Detectives, come check this out.
On the exterior of the vehicle, someone has carved the word in the paint.
Clearly, someone with a motivation or animosity toward Nikki had damaged her car.
And a closer look at Nikki's body reveals additional signs of foul play.
Once detectives check her eyes, they see burst blood vessels, telltale signs of strangulation.
Strangulation is an incredibly intimate act.
It requires a killer to stare into their victim's eyes for several minutes while they choke them.
Someone has to be extremely motivated to actually strangle a person to death. Whoever committed this crime had personal reasons to do so.
Inside the vehicle, investigators notice another clue.
And that's the blood stain on the passenger seat of the vehicle.
There aren't any injuries on Nikki that would produce a blood stain, so investigators believed that the blood that they found belonged to Nikki's killer.
Crime scene technicians take photographs. They swab the vehicle inside and out, and specifically, the blood stain was swabbed.
They don't locate any other blood evidence inside the home.
Meanwhile, Nikki's family is becoming more and more desperate for answers.
Many of the victims' loved ones have already received the news and are showing up at the scene.
Her family was actually in the process of filing a missing persons report right before her aunt discovered the body.
So sorry for your loss, but
Please know we're going to do everything we can to bring Nikki's killer to justice.
Thank you.
Nikki's relatives are just devastated from the news that Nikki has been murdered.
None of her family could believe that someone as kind and caring as Nikki could have been harmed in such a way.
You know, she didn't deserve this.
Because the way the murder was committed was so personal, the police asked Nikki's family if she had been involved in any type of dating relationships.
Romantic partners are almost always the place to start in any type of homicide investigation.
She was seeing a guy from the neighborhood named Marcus.
According to Nikki's family, they had only been together for about 6 weeks.
However, detectives still know that Marcus is someone they need to talk to right away.
We'll be sure to keep you updated.
So after leaving the crime scene, detectives head straight to Marcus's house.
When detectives approach the front door, they can smell food cooking and hear a TV playing inside the home.
Marcus Scott?
It's obvious someone is inside the house, but when they knock on the door, no one answers.
Marcus, it's the police. We need to talk to you.
They make several attempts to get Marcus's attention, but he never comes to the door.
To the investigators, this is a huge red flag that Marcus may be hiding something. Why would an innocent person refuse to answer the door?
Waco homicide detectives investigating the murder of Nikki Walker are attempting to speak with her boyfriend, Marcus Scott.
Hello, anybody home?
They can hear the TV playing, but he refuses to answer the door.
They can't help but wonder if he is avoiding them because he has some type of involvement in this crime.
Without a warrant, the only thing detectives can do is instruct officers to continue patrolling the area and wait for Marcus to emerge.
We're headed back to headquarters. Let us know if you make any contact.
And later that evening, investigators are in luck.
At about 9:30 p.m., the patrol officer notices Marcus standing outside with another man.
Marcus Scott?
Yes, officer.
The officer approaches Marcus and informs him that detectives are looking to speak with him about Nikki's death.
Detectives came by to talk to you earlier this morning. You didn't answer the door. Why not?
Oh, that was you guys? My bad. I was a little preoccupied.
Marcus told them that he heard knocks earlier that day, but he was in the bathroom and he couldn't answer the door. By the time he came out, he said they were gone.
Marcus says he was devastated to learn about Nikki's untimely death.
We weren't together for long, but man, I really cared about her.
Marcus appears to be cooperative.
He said he wants to speak to the detectives to clear his name.
Okay, well, you can come back with me to the station. Who's your friend here?
That's just my boy, Leland.
Leland?
Yeah.
Leland Marsh?
The officer recognized the name Leland Marsh.
ID.
Leland has a warrant out for his arrest for a burglary charge.
He was just one of those guys that couldn't seem to stay out of trouble with the law.
Guess what, Leland? You get to ride with me, too. Turn around, put your hands behind your back.
What? Man.
Back at police headquarters, the detectives investigating Nikki's murder sit down with Marcus Scott.
Tell us about your relationship with Nikki Walker.
Well, I met her about a month ago.
He proceeds to tell detectives that they had an on-again, off-again relationship, but they maintained a friends with benefit type relationship.
Did you kill Nikki Walker?
No, absolutely not.
Do you know who did?
No, I wish I did, but no.
He wasn't able to provide any other leads.
Detectives are still suspicious of Marcus, But they'll need more than just a hunch to solve this case.
Not only was Marcus Nikki's last romantic partner, but it also appears that Marcus was avoiding the detectives.
There was some investigating to be done, but they were believing that Marcus had something to do with it.
All right. Thank you for your time, Marcus. No problem.
And the next morning, detectives learn there's an inmate at the county jail with some promising information for them.
Homicide. Oh, he does. Interesting. Yeah, we'll be right down. Gotta go.
The informant is none other than Marcus's friend, Leland Marsh. Leland admits it's been difficult for him to come forward.
This is one of my childhood friends. When I was homeless, his mother took me in. You know what I'm saying?
You really were close.
But when Leland heard about what happened to Nikki, he started to get an uneasy feeling.
There were some things that were not adding up about Marcus's actions in the hours before Nikki was killed.
Investigators believe that Nikki was killed sometime between Tuesday night and Wednesday morning.
It had to be Tuesday night. I dropped Marcus off at a house like maybe 1 in the morning.
But Leland tells police that when he dropped Marcus off, Nikki was not at her home.
Don't let anybody hear, man.
It's okay. I'll wait.
She used to get off work at, I think, 12:45. And Marcus would be like, well, drop me off over here. And I'm like, Marcus, bro, what, you just gonna be sitting outside till she come?
Right.
And he's like, yeah, she'll be in here in a minute.
Leland says that he offered to drop Marcus off at a later time when Nikki was home, but Marcus refused.
Hey, you sure?
Yeah, man. I'm good. I'll see you later.
All right, peace.
I remember I talked to him the next day, which was Wednesday. I talked to him. I'm like, bro, what happened with Lil Mom? You stayed over there last night? He's like, nah, she never came home, so I walked to the house.
So she never came home?
Yeah, he's like, she never came home.
And on Thursday, Leland says he found out the terrible news.
When I passed by the house, I'm like, damn, they had yellow tape out, and I'm like, man, I hope I didn't have to. So I got out and I talked to this old lady, and I'm like, man, what happened?
Is Nikki okay?
She's like, my niece is dead.
While he was still at the scene, Leland immediately called Marcus.
I called Marcus, and he answered the phone. And I'm like, bro, that girl dead, bro. Nikki dead, bro. You know, so somebody killed her, bro.
But to Leland's surprise, Marcus didn't react the way he thought he would.
But Marcus was not showing no emotion.
Yeah, man. I mean, it is what it is, you know?
Marcus was like, we just broke up.
I understand that you just broke up, but this is someone you've in a relationship with.
Every day.
You're going to have some kind of reaction.
Something about that didn't sit right. Even though they were no longer a couple, something as horrific as a homicide should at least warrant some type of reaction.
Leland admits that even when Marcus and Nikki were together, their relationship was rocky.
Based on the arguments that he heard when they were together, Nikki felt like Marcus was smothering her.
Marcus, this is just becoming too much. I need space.
She had started meeting new people, going out to clubs. She was like, Marcus, you know, you want me to be around you 24/7. I got my own life, I want to have fun. I'm 29. Let me have some fun.
According to Leland, Marcus could not bear to give Nikki the space that she needed.
What, you trying to sleep around or something?
Marcus thought that she was messing with another dude.
Is there another man?
Another.
He was not okay with that. That was the tipping point.
Waco detectives investigating the death of single mother Nikki Walker are speaking with Leland Marsh, a friend of Nikki's ex, Marcus Scott. According to Leland, Marcus was exhibiting suspicious behavior in the days before Nikki's body was discovered.
For investigators, what Leland is saying raises even more red flags around Marcus.
It had to be Tuesday night. I dropped Marcus off at a house like maybe 1 in the morning.
Detectives can now place him at the scene of the crime within the time frame that Nikki was killed.
Additionally, Leland claims that days prior to her death, Nikki told Marcus she needed some space, and he didn't take it well.
Is there another man?
Another.
She was establishing that this wasn't working and that she was ending things. He was not okay with that. That was the tipping point.
Marcus is not all the way right in the mind. If you know him from like when I know him to now, that's not the same person.
Do you know what happened to him?
And he went to prison.
In the early 2000s, Marcus spent 7 years in prison for weapon charges and organized crimes.
He came out of prison, he's just not the same person.
What's changed?
Everything. I don't know how to explain it. Like, he sit down, then he'll jump up, turn around in a circle, and sit back down. Or he'll get out the car, just stand there and look down the street. I don't know if his mind is gone, you know.
After speaking with Leland, detectives are convinced that Marcus was involved in Nikki's murder.
Why didn't he mention getting dropped off at Nikki's house on Tuesday night?
The aggression, the attachment style, those are all very alarming.
And later that afternoon, Nikki's cousin Floyd Jordan comes forward with even more damning information about Marcus.
That man was no good for her.
Floyd tells the police that Marcus was abusing Nikki.
She didn't break up with him for nothing. He's dangerous.
Floyd tells the detectives that the reason Nikki and Marcus's relationship ended was because of Marcus's violent tendencies.
Tell me!
Nikki came to the realization that not only was it dangerous for her to be around Marcus, but it was dangerous for her kids as well. She didn't want them to be around that.
But Floyd says Marcus refused to take no for an answer.
He was stalking her and showing up to her house unannounced.
He would show up there. He would wait for her in the dark, wait for her at midnight.
She caught him peeking in her windows before.
Floyd tells detectives the situation came to a head on Tuesday night.
She called me Tuesday in the middle of the night, freaking out.
Nikki told Floyd that she had just recently driven home from work and found Marcus waiting for her on her porch.
Oh my God, he's on my front porch. What should I do?
You need to get out of there.
Detectives realizes what they're hearing from Floyd directly contradicts what Marcus told Leland.
Marcus told Leland that Nikki never came home that night after he dropped them off.
I told her to come pick me up and I'd help get him to leave.
He felt like he could protect her if Marcus tried anything.
So she picked me up and we went back to the house.
Marcus, what are you doing here?
I just want to talk to you. That's all.
No! It's late, and I'm over this.
Come on, man. Go home.
But once again, Marcus refused to let up.
Marcus's entire demeanor shifted.
Man, who the hell do you think you are, huh?
Just leave!
He was threatening her and basically laying out what he was going to do if she left him.
I'm gonna leave. Whoa.
Waco detectives investigating the murder of Nikki Walker are speaking with her cousin, Floyd Jordan. Floyd has just revealed that Nikki's tumultuous relationship with her ex, Marcus Scott, came to a head on the night of February 2nd.
Man, who the hell do you think you are, huh?
Just leave!
I'm gonna leave. Whoa.
He was threatening her and basically laying out what he was going to do if she left him.
You're not leaving me. You know that, right?
Marcus, just stop, okay?
You're gonna regret it if you try to leave me. I promise you that.
Cool it, man.
Hands off me.
Leave.
Floyd tells detectives that eventually Marcus stormed off in a rage. But it wasn't the last they heard from him that night.
Floyd says Marcus continued to text Nikki threatening messages.
Oh my God.
Damn, this dude isn't letting up.
What if he comes back?
The messages were so alarming that Nikki was afraid to be home alone.
Why don't you stay at my place tonight?
Okay, yeah. That might be for the better.
Let's get out of here.
Floyd tells detectives that the last time he or anyone else saw Nikki, she was leaving his house at 4 a.m. the next morning.
All of this wasn't just a coincidence. It was Marcus. I know it was him. He killed Nikki.
Floyd speculates that maybe he went back to her house to wait for her to show up there.
Whatever option you go with, to him, Marcus Scott was guilty.
Thank you so much, Floyd. We really do appreciate you coming forward with all this.
He became essential to our case because now we've got a timeline where almost immediately before the murder's committed and her body's found, we've got our suspect threatening to do her harm.
After speaking with Floyd, detectives do a deep dive into Marcus's past.
They knew, according to Leland, Marcus had been in prison before, but they didn't know the extent of his crimes.
They find that Marcus has an alarming, decade-long criminal history, including convictions for deadly conduct, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and engaging in organized criminal activity.
And as they continue their investigation, detectives uncover another shocking piece of information.
In a substantially similar case, the detectives learned that in 2015, Marcus had broken into an ex-girlfriend's house and threatened to assault her.
When detectives contact the ex-girlfriend, she admits Marcus became violent with her on several occasions.
And she says that she eventually broke up with him because of how violent and possessive that he became.
Just like with Nikki, Marcus would show up to her home unannounced and would begin following her around as well.
To detectives, it's evidence of a disturbing and escalating pattern of behavior, but it's still not proof of murder.
They knew they had to talk to Marcus Scott again and confront him with the information that they had learned.
So detectives bring him in under the guise of a simple follow-up interview.
Marcus, thanks for coming back in.
No problem.
And this time, something on Marcus's leg catches their eye.
Marcus has scratches on his shin.
He had long pants on when they previously interviewed him.
What happened to your leg? That looks pretty painful.
When the detectives ask how he obtained these scratches, Marcus tells them that they are the result of an accident he had with a screen door.
It scraped me pretty bad.
They become even more convinced that Marcus is not telling the whole story.
Remind us again, when was the last time you and Nikki got together?
Sunday.
You sure?
Yeah.
We have reason to believe that's not true.
He doesn't mention anything about Leland dropping him off at her home on Tuesday night.
You saw her Tuesday, didn't you?
You two had an argument that night?
What? No, I never saw her on Tuesday.
Well, you willing to take a polygraph test to prove that?
Sure.
Although reluctant, Marcus does agree to go through with the lie detector test.
Did you get into an argument with Nikki Walker on Tuesday night, April 2nd?
No.
Did you harm Nikki Walker?
No.
Initially, he had denied any involvement, denied any violence in the relationship in the past, but then he fails the polygraph.
However, when detectives confront Marcus about the polygraph test results, he still doesn't waver.
All right, Marcus, tests show you're being deceptive. It's time to start telling the truth.
No, I didn't kill her. We got into a few arguments. Yeah, but nothing too crazy.
Marcus admits that he had been violent with Nikki in the past. He stated at one point he actually hit Nikki to get off of him during a fight that they had, which Nikki initiated.
And then he admits to play choking her during an argument in January.
Play choke?
Yeah, but we were just messing around, that's all.
He continues to maintain that he had absolutely nothing to do with the murder.
And unfortunately for investigators, The results of the polygraph can't be used as evidence in court.
There's really good reason for that. Polygraph examinations, they're not a lie detector test. What they do is they measure sweat levels, heart rate, things that generally can be associated with deception. So they certainly have their value. They're just not admissible in any courtroom.
Therefore, with no confession or any other hard evidence, detectives will be forced to let Marcus go once again.
While Marcus's lies and his troubling relationship with Nikki point towards guilt, the detectives have no forensic evidence to prove that Marcus committed this murder.
But before he leaves, detectives obtain a sample of Marcus's DNA.
It could be months until they receive the results from the DNA evidence found at the crime scene, and eventually those months turn into years.
The Waco DPS crime lab, where we send blood to be analyzed for DNA, it simply takes time. It's a time-consuming process, and across the state of Texas, Waco included, forensic crime labs are overloaded with the amount of things that they have to test.
Nikki's loved ones start to grow worried that they will never receive justice for what has been done to her.
But then, on March 19th, 2018, more than 2 years after Nikki was killed, there's a breakthrough.
Detectives received word from the crime lab that they have completed testing on the specimens submitted in Nikki's case.
Marcus's blood was found at the crime scene. There's no longer any doubt on who's behind this murder.
The investigators believe that the blood came from the cut that he had on his leg.
Armed with their smoking gun, detectives file a warrant for Marcus's arrest on April 6th, 2018.
Marcus is taken into custody that same day.
He refuses to answer any more questions and asks for a lawyer.
And while justice for Nikki is long overdue, it looks like her loved ones may have to wait even longer.
Marcus is deemed incompetent to stand trial due to a psychotic disorder.
He punches a nurse who's trying to provide him with treatment.
Gators finally have Marcus Scott in custody for the murder of his ex-girlfriend, Nikki Walker.
2 years went by without them being able to convict anyone for Nikki's murder.
But now they have DNA evidence to prove that Marcus's blood was in Nikki's car. Along with other circumstantial evidence, this case seemed like a slam dunk.
But in February of 2020, the case hits another roadblock.
During a pretrial hearing in February of 2020, Marcus is deemed incompetent to stand trial due to a psychotic disorder.
In order to be incompetent, there has to be proof that an individual does not understand the consequences of decisions that they can make.
As a result of this diagnosis, Marcus's trial is paused until he is able to get the necessary treatment.
What usually happens in Texas is that somebody who is held incompetent, they get sent to a state hospital until they regain competence. Some people never regain competence, some people do.
All right, Mr. Scott, open up.
But even in the hospital, Marcus's violent tendencies emerge.
He punches a nurse who's trying to provide him with treatment. Ultimately, Marcus was charged with aggravated assault on a public servant, which is a third-degree felony.
3 years later, after undergoing additional psychiatric evaluation, Marcus is finally deemed competent to stand trial. But a new curveball hits this already muddled case.
Marcus goes blind during his time in the hospital due to glaucoma.
Marcus was a very different person than he was when he committed this murder. He was almost completely blind. It's a challenge from the outset because when jurors walk in, who they see seated at counsel table next to his attorney is a fairly nondescript, relatively thin blind man.
However, prosecutors warn jurors not to be fooled.
prosecutors paint him as a vengeful ex who could not stand the rejection from Nikki Walker.
They point to Marcus' previous relationships and arrest history as proof that his anger and controlling tendencies were spiraling completely out of control.
And we had family violence experts come and testify to those dynamics and what jurors can expect statistically when it comes to this kind of homicide. Any individual in a domestic relationship with a strangulation event in that relationship is 700% more likely to ultimately take that person's life.
And prosecutors believe that's exactly what happened to Nikki.
Marcus had become physically aggressive with her.
Marcus himself admitted to their arguments becoming violent at times.
As far as Nikki was concerned, this wasn't something that she was willing to put up with.
And when she broke up with Marcus at the end of January, prosecutors say it was like lighting a fuse on a time bomb.
Nikki was ready to end the relationship. And when you're talking about family violence cases, the most dangerous time is when the relationship is ending, because the control and power that the abusive partner has is about to end.
It finally sunk in that the relationship was over. Nikki was not going to take him back.
At that point, instead of letting Nikki walk away, Marcus decided that if he couldn't have her, no one else could either.
Prosecutors believe that after the Tuesday night confrontation with Floyd and Nikki, Marcus returned to Nikki's house.
She came back home around 4:30 a.m.
When Nikki returned to the house, Marcus was waiting on her.
Marcus, what are you doing?
Marcus managed to overpower Nikki and wrap his hands around her throat. He held his grip until she was dead.
With his adrenaline pumping, Marcus didn't realize his shin had smeared blood onto the passenger seat.
Then Marcus carved the obscenity into the side of her car.
Then he fled the scene and went back home as if nothing had happened.
The defense argues just because Marcus's blood was in the car doesn't prove anything.
Their story is a simple one, that we can't meet our burden, which is beyond a reasonable doubt, because the evidence or the investigation is insufficient to reach that burden.
Marcus claims that his blood must have gotten in the car from the other times that him and Nikki have had fights.
Prosecutors refuted this by saying the blood found in the passenger seat was bright red, indicating that it was fresh, as if it's only been there a day or two. And Marcus was seen with a wound on his leg.
When the jury retires to deliberate, it takes them just 30 minutes to return with a verdict. Marcus Scott is found guilty of first-degree felony murder.
Marcus was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Although Marcus received the maximum sentence for his crimes, Nikki's loved ones still struggle to deal with the loss that will now forever haunt them.
There's no winners when we come out of a trial like this.
Although I think that justice was served, I think that it's a lose-lose situation because now her children are left without a mom.
It's just a very, very sad experience, especially for her children who now have to grow up without their mother. And then the memory of such a violent way that they lost.
And nothing is off limits. But some desires in life shouldn't be gratified and aren't worth the risk, especially if they come with a warning label. If you begin flirting with danger, it might just flirt back, wrapping you in its grasp with no way out. And 16. It's a chilly winter day in the bustling city of Little Rock, Arkansas.
We have good shopping, good restaurants. It's a really good place. Everybody knows somebody around here. It's a smaller, big town vibe.
But just before 2 p.m., a flurry of 911 calls come into the Little Rock Police Department.
We had a bank robbery in progress with shots fired.
Our manager's been shot. He is laying on the floor behind the desk.
We need him, Doctor. Yes, right. Some of your managers been shot. Yes.
Within minutes, police arrive on the scene.
There was a chance the shooter could have still been somewhere on the premises, so police had to use extreme caution.
Officers enter the bank with guns drawn.
Anytime we have a situation where shots have been fired and we're not sure if the suspects or suspects have cleared a building, we handle it as though the suspect is still in there and still armed.
Once inside, police see the bank manager lying on the floor, surrounded by blood.
He appeared to be conscious, but still in a great deal of pain.
The bank personnel were all very shooken up.
People are so concerned because they have no idea if he's going to make it. I really, in my mind, thought we were going to lose him, and that was terrifying.
Officers rush to assess the manager's wounds, while others fan out to speak to witnesses. And when they do, they'll discover the shooter wasn't alone. He had an accomplice. "18-year-old beauty Jaisha Howard had a bright future ahead of her.
She wants to be a lawyer. The way she discussed being a lawyer, I can see that spark in her eye, and it made me so happy.
She felt that she became an attorney, that she can help those without a voice to be their voice.
She was very caring. It doesn't matter if it was the shirt on her back, she would have gave it to you.
Jaisha was not only known for her compassionate nature, but her ability to see the bright side in things.
She is literally the most fun person. She can make you laugh instantly, no matter how bad your day is going.
So when she met local troublemaker Tyrone Randolph, she easily saw past his faults.
She met Tyrone through some friends when they were all hanging out at a basketball court together one day.
It was kind of like that love at first sight.
I think the attraction was he was everything different from her. He was a little bit more rebellious, more adventurous.
He really didn't have any ambitions to be in school. He was just trying to make a way through the streets.
Tyrone was 2 years younger than Jaisha, but his age and reputation didn't stop her from expressing her interest in him.
Tyrone was very charming and very mature for his age.
She just say how she used to get butterflies from him. This was the first time she encountered someone that she get the adrenaline just from them being dangerous.
He was somebody that she knew her parents wouldn't approve of, and that was probably exciting for her.
That attraction was so strong that she pretty much, as a result, did anything she thought she could do to be appreciated by him.
Before long, Jaisha and Tyrone became a couple, and there was no denying the chemistry between the two.
These two were madly in love. They were obsessed with each other.
She probably felt like she had won the lottery. I got him.
She was like, oh my God, Tyrone, there's something about him. I love him so much, and I don't know this feeling that I'm having, and this is the guy I want to marry. This is the guy I want to have a baby with.
Jaisha's new man became the center of her entire world, and there wasn't much room for anyone else.
When she wasn't in school, every free second she had was with Tyrone, so that meant her friends and family had to take a back seat.
When she got with Tyrone, she cut off from her family, her friends that have known her forever.
I definitely had this deep down feeling that she didn't need to even go down the road with Tyrone.
We all just tried to handle it and say, hey, you need to leave him alone. But Jaisha rebelled worse.
She was so consumed with Tyrone that she dedicated everything to him.
She had a date set when they were supposed to get engaged. She had like a whole life planned for them.
Little did Jaysha know, the perfect future she was planning with her man would come at a lofty cost.
She was willing to do whatever it took to be there for him because she felt like she was in love and this was who she wanted.
She's putting her freedom on the line and possibly her life.
January 6, 2016, Little Rock, Arkansas. Police are investigating a robbery turned shooting at a local bank.
Mr. Lewis, who's the bank manager, had been shot.
They find 43-year-old Sam Lewis on the ground with blood rushing out of his shoulder and his hand.
It's a clear, clean through shot on him. Goes through his shoulder, clips his finger, pretty much severs his finger.
Fortunately, Sam appears to be in stable condition.
I knew that I was severely injured, and I was just determined not to die there on that bank floor.
As they wait for EMTs to arrive, Sam and his co-workers tell police what happened.
The suspect entered the bank, approached the two tellers that were working at the counter.
He was wearing a clown mask.
He came in the door waving a huge sawed-off shotgun, and my tellers were absolutely frightened.
He demands the money. She's able to get almost $3,000 for him.
He received the money, and he's going towards the door, and I'm thinking, oh God, it's almost over. He's gonna take this money and bolt out the door. But that's not what happened.
He's walking out, and then he stops abruptly and looking to his left, which is where Mr. Lewis was sitting.
We essentially locked eyes, and that's when something just told me he's about to shoot. And the next thing you know, the weapon fired. It seemed like everything went in slow motion, and I remember going from the chair to the floor. My shoulder was numb, I could see blood, and I looked at my hand and I could see bone and tissue. My finger was nearly severed.
No one is sure what prompted the shot, but police know they need to track down the gunman before he hurts anyone else.
Detectives are concerned they don't know if he'll do this again.
Before they can look far, police catch a lucky break.
Someone could actually see the gunman running away from the bank and could identify not only the getaway car, but also his accomplice.
In the spring of 2015, Jaysha Howard thought she'd found the man of her dreams in Tyrone Randolph.
Tyrone was her first love. He was very mature for his age. She was like, I've never had a man just shower me with so much love.
Tyrone had a bit of a reputation around town.
He sold drugs, he did a lot of things.
Tyrone, unfortunately, was living the street life.
Jaysha, however, chose to look past Tyrone's shortcomings.
Jaysha thought she could change Tyrone. She may have very much thought that she could be the thing he needed.
Her heart was way bigger than her thinking at that point. My niece had naive eyes and a very strong heart. I would say she was easy prey to be used.
Soon, Jaysha would take her love for Tyrone to another level of devotion. One that would eventually cost her everything.
She loved this young man so much that she risked her entire freedom.
January 6, 2016. Little Rock police have just arrived at a local bank in response to a violent robbery turned shooting.
Sam Lewis, the bank manager, who'd been shot in his hand and his shoulder.
He seemed to be in a lot of pain, but he was stable, so police took a statement from him and other witnesses while they waited for medics to arrive.
According to Sam and his co-workers, the assailant had shot Sam point blank before fleeing the building.
It was senseless. He already had what he needed. He could have just walked out and it would have been over.
He had the money. And all he had to do was leave the bank. There was no reason to fire the weapon. There was no reason to harm anyone.
Shortly after Sam is transported to the hospital, detectives arrive on the scene.
We were thinking this was going to be a hard crime to solve. The suspect didn't really touch anything in the bank. He touched the doors, but he had gloves on. Chances of finding his DNA, even if he wasn't gloved, would be pretty slim.
He's on the loose. They don't know if he's going to go target another bank or another business. Detectives want to catch this suspect as soon as they can.
Fortunately, one of the bank's employees, Tammy Ambrose, may be able to help.
She was outside during the shooting, and she actually saw the shooter run away from the bank.
Tammy says she had been leaving work for the day when it happened.
She got out to her car. As she was putting her belongings in the back seat, she heard a loud bang. It sounded like a bomb had gone off in my ear. It was like almost like a ringing. It was so loud. My heart sank. I was trembling.
From the safety of her car, Tammy saw the man in the mask flee the bank.
The bank robber runs outside of the bank. He gets into a maroon vehicle.
Tammy then saw the shooter take off his mask.
She saw him without the mask. It was a young black male.
The young man had an accomplice.
There was a getaway driver and waiting in the car.
She was able to view a biracial female driving the car.
Tammy had also gotten a good look at the vehicle's license plate information.
She provided a description of the license plate that was on the car.
When detectives run the plate, they immediately get a hit.
It's connected to a young man named Tyrone Randolph.
This is a huge break in the case.
Detectives make their way to the address on file for the vehicle, hoping they'll be able to catch their modern-day Bonnie and Clyde.
Police stake out the house where the car is registered.
The suspect vehicle was sitting in the driveway in front of the residence.
Within minutes, detectives see movement. A young couple exits the front door of the house.
It was a male fitting the suspect description and a female that appeared to be biracial.
Once the two suspects get inside their vehicle, police spring into action.
The units pull in behind the vehicle, turn on their emergency equipment.
This is a really tense situation. Police don't know if these suspects have a gun. They're considered armed and dangerous.
Just located suspected bank robber Tyrone Randolph and his female accomplice.
Tyrone went into the bank to rob it, but then ended up shooting the manager, Sam Lewis. And they believe the woman was his getaway driver.
Now, police have the two suspects in their crosshairs.
The car is surrounded. I'm sure the teenagers are feeling frightened, scared, anxious.
They order the driver to toss the keys from the vehicle, then open the door from the outside.
Police officers command them to put their hands up, to get out of the car, to turn around, and to back up slowly.
The young couple does as instructed.
The female identified herself as Jaisha Howard, Tyrone's girlfriend. She just kept saying, you know, what's this about? Why are you doing this? We ain't done nothing. She was playing dumb.
She was not going down without a fight. She didn't want to admit to anything.
Tyrone, however, appears to see the writing on the wall.
He had his head down, and he says, I know what this is about. We placed them separately in two different patrol units so that they could not talk to each other.
As the patrol units prepare to pull away with Tyrone and Jaisha in tow, Tyrone's mother emerges from the home.
Detectives explain to Tyrone's mom that Tyrone and Jaisha are suspected in a bank robbery that's happened earlier today where someone has been shot.
She was pretty unhappy at that point with Tyrone, it appeared. She was concerned about the well-being of the person that was shot.
The detectives ask about Tyrone's relationship with Jaisha.
She basically stated that Jaisha is older than him and that was his girlfriend, and that she stays with them sometimes there at the house.
She knows that her son is a little rough around the edges, but Jaisha was a sweet girl, a good girl. Tyrone's mom said the two were smitten. They loved each other.
Tyrone's mother says the couple left the house earlier that afternoon, but seemed fine when they returned.
Nothing was out of the ordinary. The two didn't seem like they just robbed a bank.
Detectives asked Tyrone's mother if they can search her home.
I explained to her that we believed that he had possibly brought the gun back to the residence. She was adamant she did not want that gun or anything like that in her house.
Tyrone's mother shows them to a back bedroom.
I had her stand there and watch while I searched the room. And at that point, I started recovering evidence.
It was a gold mine in there. They found everything they were looking for.
The sawed-off shotgun was stuck down between the wall and the bed, and it had been unloaded. There was a spent shell casing, which would be the round that was fired in the bank.
Not only do they find the gun, but they find the mask.
Then, in a purse, they find money. A lot of it.
They assumed it must have been Jaisha's purse.
They find the nearly $3,000 that had been stolen from the bank.
Also, I found a saw, which to me would indicate that's what they used to saw the barrel of the gun off with.
With the evidence piling up, detectives hope the two suspects ultimately confess.
It helps to have good, solid evidence prior to questioning. A lot of times they'll realize quick that the game's over.
Back at the station, detectives start with their suspected shooter, Tyrone Randolph.
You actually indicated that you wanted to talk about what happened and try to help yourself. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. He was very, almost methodical in the way he spoke. He had a deep voice for a young man. He really showed no emotion.
Tyrone agrees to tell all, in hopes of a lesser sentence.
He is singing like a bird. He's telling them everything from beginning to end.
According to Tyrone, he and Jaisha needed money ASAP because Jaisha was pregnant.
He said they weren't ready for this and they didn't have the money to support a child.
It kind of got to me. I don't have a job, I'm only 16, I'm not in school.
Based on that, he had gotten this plan to do something to get money, which was to rob a bank.
Tyrone says he knew he needed a gun to pull it off, so he enlisted Jaisha's help.
Because he wasn't old enough, he got Jaisha to buy him the gun.
Tyrone tells detectives that once Jaisha bought him the gun, he manipulated it.
He tells police that she was in the room when he sawed the shotgun off.
After that, Tyrone says Jaisha drove him to the bank.
When she parked, I said, look, I'm finna go make some money.
Tyrone told Jaisha he would be back in that spot in 5 minutes.
He put his mask on and gets the gun. He heads to the bank.
Tyrone admits that inside the bank, he was terrified.
The whole time I'm thinking, Lord, please help me get through this. Just hurry up and get it done with. I was trying to get the money and go. That's all I was in for.
Tyrone claims it was shaky nerves and sweaty hands that led to the shooting.
He said he tried to readjust his hands because he felt like the gun was slipping and it went off.
Tyrone says shooting the branch manager was a complete accident.
I didn't mean to shoot him, but the gun went off. I did not mean it, sir.
Detectives are skeptical of Tyrone's claim that the shot he fired was an accident.
I don't believe it was an accident. He claims that his hands were sweaty, but he had gloves on.
Not to mention, Tyrone's statement directly conflicts with the victim's account.
The bank manager said he meant to shoot.
He had the money, so the only other thing to do was fire the weapon.
Detectives hope that by speaking to Tyrone's girlfriend, Jaisha, they can get to the bottom of things.
Jaisha had a choice. She could either lie about everything that happened and protect herself, or she can tell the truth
But when detectives sit down with Jaysha, they'll learn that she had a history of riding for Tyrone.
This isn't the first time she's actually committed a crime for her man. She just couldn't say no, and she would do whatever he wanted her to do.
He gave her an adrenaline rush that she'd never had before.
2016. Authorities in Little Rock, Arkansas, have teenage couple Tyrone Randolph and Jaysha Howard in custody for a violent armed robbery that took place just hours earlier.
They made out with about $3,000, and a man was shot in the process.
Tyrone has confessed to detectives, but they aren't so sure he's telling them the whole story.
He says Jaysha was pregnant. They were going to rob the bank and get enough money for their new baby.
He told police he never meant to shoot someone. It was an accident.
Detectives are eager to see if Jaysha's version of events matches her boyfriend's.
Just from her demeanor during that arrest, detectives think this is going to be an uphill battle to even try to get the truth out of her.
She kept trying to act like she didn't know what was going on. Pretty sure she knew exactly what was going on.
Detective Martin has his partner take the lead with Jaysha.
I felt like with Jaysha's demeanor that she would be more receptive to speaking to a female detective.
You're in a relationship with Tyrone Randolph, is that correct?
Correct.
He's been your boyfriend for how long?
A year.
She came off as a kind of a shy, laid-back girl. She's kind of soft-spoken.
Detectives confront Jaysha with the evidence they found at Tyrone's house, the eyewitness statement, and most damning of all, Tyrone's confession.
She's in disbelief. He's kind of thrown Jaysha under the bus. Tyrone has given them all of the information they needed to link her to the robbery.
Tyrone has told the police that Jaysha is the getaway driver and that she was the purchaser of the gun.
She really, really loved him deeply. And when she found out that he betrayed her, she felt anger, deep resentment, a whole lot of embarrassment.
After learning that Tyrone has sold her out, Jaysha's demeanor changes. She stops protecting him and starts to open up.
She says Tyrone had a habit of taking things that were not his.
Jaysha admits that recently, Tyrone started enlisting her help in his illegal shopping sprees.
She once stole some khaki pants to give to Tyrone.
Why did you steal those pants?
Because he wanted them. He asked me to.
Jaysha wanted to show her loyalty to him, to show him that I'm here for you.
According to Jaysha, Tyrone's demands escalated just a few weeks later. The same week, she became pregnant.
Detectives asked Jaysha if she's ever taken a test and if she could confirm that she's pregnant.
To their surprise, Jaysha says no.
They thought that he had gotten her pregnant because she had recently had unprotected sex with him.
Jaysha said Tyrone was so certain she was pregnant that she didn't even feel she needed to take a test.
Just something in her mind saying, I'm pregnant. She was excited at the same time because it was like, I'm having a baby by a man I love so much.
She was very happy because she's always wanted a baby.
It's pretty crazy to assume you're pregnant without taking a test, but Tyrone was certain, he was convinced, and she trusted him.
You can be a little bit more naive when you love people, when you get those emotions involved.
Jaysha says she and Tyrone were concerned about how they were going to pay for a pregnancy and support a new baby. But Tyrone had a plan.
He said, we'll go rob this and we'll have money for our child and we'll get out of here and we'll start our new life.
Jaysha was very nervous, but she wasn't going to voice her full opinion because she loved Tyrone and she didn't want to lose him. She allowed him to lead her down this path.
She wasn't going to let him go do it by himself because she didn't want him to get hurt, so she was going to be there.
Considering he's my boyfriend, I didn't want nothing bad to happen to him.
The two went over all the little details. They talked about when they were going to do it. the mask. They talked about how it was going to be done, where they were going to go. They picked that bank because over in West Little Rock off of Highway 10, it wasn't a very busy time of day. It was a quiet neighborhood. This type of thing doesn't typically happen, so people would be unassuming.
She had to show Tyrone again that I'm going to continue to be loyal to you. I'm going to continue to support you. I'm going to continue to ride for you.
Jaisha confirms that Tyrone instructed her to buy the gun and that she watched him saw it off.
Some women feel that they do whatever their men ask them to do, that they're actually winning, when a lot of times they're actually losing.
Jaisha says after they were finished manipulating the gun, it was time to put their plan into action.
He said, "Are you gonna ride?" He said, "You're not gonna get in no trouble, baby."
In that moment, Jaisha made a choice that would change her life forever.
Can't just leave him. I couldn't.
She's risking her freedom. She's risking everything that she has worked for.
Jaisha says the shooting was never part of the plan. But when Tyrone came back, she knew what she needed to do.
I think Jaisha knew that this is it, that there's no turning back.
For her to do what she did, there was a heck of a lot of deep love.
18-year-old Jaisha Howard about her connection to a violent armed bank robbery turned shooting.
Her boyfriend Tyrone admitted to his role as the shooter and her role as the getaway driver.
Jaisha concedes that she agreed to help Tyrone with the robbery after the couple came to an alarming conclusion just a few days after having unprotected sex.
They thought she was pregnant. He wanted to get money, and they had talked about getting money and a plan to do so, which would be to rob the bank.
Tyrone assured her no one's going to get hurt, so she tells police that she went with it.
According to Jaisha, she agreed to drive Tyrone to the bank and wait for him outside. But once they arrived, she began to have second thoughts.
She doesn't know what's going to happen. She's trying to stay calm. He told her, "You don't have anything to worry about. No one's going to know it's him. She's not going to be connected to it."
Jaisha says it wasn't so much the thought of getting in trouble that gave her pause. It was her man's safety.
There was definitely a lot of emotions going on. Jaisha was trying to be this ride or die chick. Whatever my man wants, I'm doing, no matter what. I don't care if it causes me to get in trouble, I'm doing it. But she didn't know if he would get hurt. She didn't know what would happen.
I'm praying that he was gonna be okay. That's my main thing. I don't want to see him get shot.
Regardless of her reservations, Jaisha admits that she wasn't going to let her man down.
She wanted to present herself as the type of woman who supports a man, who doesn't question him, that whatever he needs, she can give it to him.
The only thing I told him, be careful.
Did he cover his face with anything that you saw?
Yeah.
What?
Mask.
Jaisha says that Tyrone ran into the bank, and minutes later, she heard a shot.
She felt terrified when she heard this shot. She didn't know if her man could have been shot.
She's extremely frantic and ready to leave the scene.
When Tyrone ran out just seconds after, Jaisha says she was relieved that he was okay. But she was also terrified that he may have hurt someone.
When he got in the car, I said, "Did you shoot somebody?" He said, "I'll tell you later." When I asked him again, he said, "Yes, baby."
He said it was an accident, and he's yelling at her, "Just drive off, drive."
Jaisha says at that point, she sped off and could only pray the man he had shot would survive.
She was scared. Her man could have killed somebody.
It was wrong. It was never intended.
Jaisha says when they got back to Tyrone's house, he directed her to help him hide the evidence, namely, the $3,000 stolen from the bank.
He told her she needed to keep that money in her purse.
She knew it was wrong, but she went along with it because she loved Tyrone that much.
Her mindset was, I'm the perfect girlfriend, I'll be the perfect wife. Whatever the man tells me to do, I'm gonna do it.
With that, detectives end the interview, and Jaysha is escorted to her jail cell.
She felt defeated because she had goals of being a mother, raising a family, and just starting a whole new life. But now she may never be able to accomplish that goal.
Jaysha probably started seeing her future fading away, thinking about how instead of being a lawyer, she might be sitting in a jail cell.
The next morning, detectives get their hands on the surveillance footage from the bank. Even though Tyrone claimed the shooting was an accident, they suspected the footage might prove otherwise.
He said it was an accident that the gun went off, but it was just a look in his eye. Then you just see like these eyes in the mask. They were determined. He stopped and pointed the weapon and fired.
The witness accounts are confirmed by the surveillance footage.
The video was impeccable. You could see very clear what happened.
When you see something like that on tape, that he had every opportunity to walk out of the building with the money and accomplish his goal, but he was determined that he was going to fire a shot before he left that building. He intentionally rocked back and pulled the trigger.
The video clearly shows this was no accident.
Soon, detectives will receive yet another alarming piece of information. One that suggests the crime was even more senseless than they had originally imagined.
Tyrone knew exactly what he was doing when he convinced her that she was pregnant. This was all a part of his master plan.
Could have been her way out of Arkansas and her chance to start a new life. So she believed everything he said.
2016, Little Rock, Arkansas. 18-year-old Jaysha Howard and her boyfriend, Tyrone Randolph, are in custody for their involvement in a violent bank robbery turned shooting.
The shooting victim and bank manager Sam Lewis survived, but the witness testimony and video shows that this shooting was intentional.
His eyes looked determined. He was on a mission.
He had the money. All he had to do was turn and leave. So for him to discharge that rifle that day, it was unnecessary.
Soon, detectives receive even more alarming information.
They ordered a pregnancy test for Jaysha to take while she was in jail, and got word it came back. It was negative. She wasn't pregnant.
I feel bad that she found out she wasn't. Because it's like all this could have probably been avoided.
Detectives surmise Tyrone may have tried to make Jaysha think she was pregnant as part of his overall plan.
He may have been planning this robbery all along, and he convinced Jaysha that she was pregnant so that she would actually help him.
Jaysha Howard and Tyrone Randolph are charged with attempted capital murder, aggravated robbery, battery, and theft of property. On top of that, Jaysha is charged with furnishing a deadly weapon to a minor.
Due to the violent nature of this crime, the prosecuting attorney's office authorized me to charge Tyrone as an adult with attempted capital murder.
Jaysha's friends and family are shocked that their loved one has gotten wrapped up in such a violent crime.
There was nothing that could have prepared me for that day to tell me my niece had went to rob a bank.
I remember crying and just crying all day long because every time I turned around, somebody was posting it on Facebook or how Jaysha did this, how Jaysha did that.
I saw on the news the Bonnie and Clyde of Arkansas, and I'm just like, wait, this is Jaysha.
October 2016. In a pre-trial hearing, Tyrone and his attorneys try to put everything on Jaysha.
It was like that back and forth little law game that people play. Well, she's of legal age and she gave the money, so this must have been her idea.
Tyrone's attorneys suggest that Jaysha was the true mastermind behind the crime, and Tyrone was simply manipulated into doing her bidding.
Tyrone's defense attorneys were basically saying that he was a kid, but he was in this trap with an older woman.
They tried to make it seem like she's the one that manipulated him, that made him think that he needed to do this for her.
Tyrone's legal team also bolsters his original claim that the shooting was a complete accident.
Tyrone explains his hand slipped and he accidentally shot the gun and shot Mr. Lewis.
However, the evidence and witness statements are more than enough for the judge to refute Tyrone's stance.
The judge was not buying Tyrone's story. It was clear he was the mastermind and shot Sam Lewis on purpose. So Tyrone had an option of going to trial and letting a jury decide his fate, or pleading guilty and taking a 30-year sentence.
Ultimately, Tyrone decides to take the plea.
They asked, did you already say anything? He didn't say anything. No remorse, nothing.
This was a very violent crime. His lack of remorse was eerie.
In the wake of Tyrone's sentencing, Jaysha also decides to plead guilty. Before hearing her sentence, Jaysha apologizes to the court and to the victim, bank manager Sam Lewis.
She turned around and told the man, like, I'm sorry that I made these choices that harmed you and your family. I own full responsibility for my actions. I respected her for that.
I'm raised to forgive, but it's so hard when my life is not the same. So at the moment, I haven't arrived at the forgiveness stage yet.
Though her remorse is appreciated, the judge still throws the book at Jaysha.
Jaysha ends up being sentenced to 21 years in prison.
When those 21, she can get out in maybe 9 with good behavior and the rest on parole.
I felt like somebody punched me in the stomach, because I know even after my niece gets out, it's not going to be easy for her. It's not.
It's a tough lesson to learn. You seek love, and then it ends up being your undoing.
Jaysha had a really good future, and she just let love get in the way of that. That became her downfall. Love.
I think she's looking back at herself now like there were so many red flags. There was so much I could have done to avoid all this.
That whole ride or die for my man thing, I think that's what the kids think is cool, to keep him happy, do whatever he says, but that's just not, it's not cool.
When you're young, it can be tempting to flirt with danger. It feels harmless, and the rush is exciting. But if you're not careful, danger can grab hold.